Hello, my name is Peter Cinnamon, and you're listening to a podcast which is all about the Irish League. It's a brand new year. We've got a brand new podcast episode for you, but we've got some familiar names still claiming the spotlight in the NIFL Premiership. Linfield being one of them. They were able to hold off Lauren at Inver Park to keep their seat atop of the pile going into 2024. Meanwhile, it looks like some people's New Year's resolution across the league was to be with a new club, managers included. I'm going to give you an update on some potential movements of the dugout variety, chat players who have already penciled in transfers to new teams, and we're going to squeeze in a preview of Irish Cup 5th round weekend in this week's edition of Kicking Match. Happy New Year, hopefully, old acquaintances be not forgot. Whatever, you're back again for another new year of Irish League chat on Kicking Match. I hope you're well. To kick off the very first podcast of 2024, I am, of course, going to use it talking about the final game of 2023. And my first guest of the year, that is 2024, AD. Hello, and welcome back, reporter and commentator. It's Mark Strange.
Peter, how are we?
I'm doing good. A little update for everybody else who didn't know anyway, but we can say it. Over the festive period, we got to finally meet up and say hello in person at a game, and it was a rather entertaining game. We talked about it on the podcast last week of what went down, but we had a little lovely Boxing Day. It sat up in, can we call it the gantry at Loco?
Yeah, I think it's a gantry. That's an old school gantry, but a gantry nonetheless, I would say.
It had a little partition.
Yeah.
We were 2 steps up from the pitch. We could hear all of the shenanigans going on from the coaches going onto the pitch. It was a thrilling game between Dungannon and Loughgall. And yeah, we got to spend time chatting about Christmas. I had a leftover sandwich. It was one of the big highlights of the day. That, and of course, Benji McGee started off his little festive Benji McGee run. But we're not going to start with Benji McGee in the podcast this week. We're going to start with a game which had something on the line. It was a battle of the top 2. Linfield were sitting in first place, and whoever won this game was going to be riding high. They'd have been sitting back watching the hootenanny going, I'm top of the Irish League. In the end, it was a draw, 1-1, which then meant that Linfield retained their status at the top of the division. I said last week it was probably going to be a draw. It ended up being a draw. I know the answer is that both teams will take this, but does that result, especially by the fact that it was at Inver, does that result suit Linfield more, and by how much more?
Yeah, probably. If you'd offered that, probably if you offered it to both teams beforehand, they both would have taken it. But Lauren being at home, sold out Inver Park. I know the CIA, the Casual Inver Army, had an amazing pyro show and everything before the game, big atmosphere. And by the sounds of it, I wasn't at that one, but the sounds that Lauren got off to a flyer, really rode that kind of the noise and atmosphere inside Inver to a good start. But Linfield, I think, will be happy enough. Still a point clear, game in hand, going into the new year. I mean, it's by no means really doesn't matter anything at this stage. But yeah, I think to be honest, it would probably favour Linfield. Don't think Lauren are too disappointed by it, but I'd say if you'd offered both a draw beforehand, both probably would have taken it, but Linfield maybe a little bit happy with that one.
Let's reflect on that display. Actually, it was quite eye-catching at the start of the game. There was a huge big banner at that church end stand, and packed out, rammed, as you said, because of the sellout. And you'd like to think that a game like this, top 2, Saturday afternoon, most people are sitting chilling off between Christmas and New Year's. This is an attraction game, and it was a great display, like a big banner from top to bottom. There was smokes, there was foils, is that what that is? The kind of shiny little bannery bit. Look, Linfield did a bit of that in the game between themselves and Glentoran, so Lauren wanted to bounce back and show their colours, show a bit of their theatrics there, and it was a nice start, and it gave it a great atmosphere. And you're right, Lauren jumped ahead. It was a classic Lee bonus goal. The one thing you do not want to do is fire the ball over the top and give Lee Bonus to run onto that ball, because he is happy to shove that defender out of the way, run onto the ball, and the fact he got control of it, he rounded the keeper, slotted it in within the first 10-15 minutes of the game. And going into that match, I felt as though Larne had this relentless energy and they're ready to take on everybody. And Linfield were slipping by teams and avoiding mistakes. They've been pinned back, but then they rise to the challenge. And once again, it was another situation. You're in the home of the champions. It's packed to the rafters. And now you're a 1 goal down, knowing that that's going to leave them top at the end of it. But Linfield looked very cool, very assured. They didn't seem to like get out of their rhythm. They knew what they wanted to do, and then they were able to snap back before the halftime whistle. And it's Matthew Fitzpatrick who has become the main man now for Linfield in the goal scoring ranks, especially with Joel Cooper being in and out of the team with, it seems, an injury. He gets ahead of goal, they're back in, even Stevens. That's when you could tell this is going to be a ding-dong battle.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned Matt Fitzpatrick there. Yeah, I'm glad to see it for him. How well he has done these 2 really big games over Christmas for his sake. He was maybe didn't go off to. I mean, he's done okay, but maybe not exactly got off to the hottest start at Linfield. A few Linfield fans may sort of questioning, is he the man to sort of fire us to the title? But he's shown his worth now, and I think that point at Inver was a very Linfield point. Yes, you go behind early, and by all accounts were well under the cosh. Larne maybe could have been 2 or 3 up by the time Linfield had equalised, but it's something they do so well. They've done for years, and it's become a thing for them under Healy, really, that that's hang around in games, stick around, get that goal back at some point in the game. And I think it was a crucial time for them to get the goal, because they said, had they not, all of a sudden Larne are building, could be going in ahead, and it's a tough second half. But yeah, a very Linfield-esque point that they picked up there.
Let's also give Michael Newbury a bit of shine. He picks up the ball on the right-hand side. He's got a defender to beat. He turns him, looks into the box, dinks the ball in expertly. An absolute perfect little ball in. And Matthew Fitzpatrick is happy to run on and nod those in all day. From there, the game became a bit more nip and tuck, a bit more of a tactical battling affair, and it didn't really open up. It kind of shut down from there, and it just felt like it was going to be something. It was going to either be a breakaway, or it was going to be a bit of magic in the box that was going to change that up as either team tried to unlock each other's defence. And I'm sure from a Larne perspective, they'll be ruining that opportunity that fell to Lee Bonus in the box. He spun on the ball, and usually that means it's going straight into the top corner in the back of the net. Unfortunately, kind of just dribbled to the left hand side of him and away, and it sets it up now where it ends a deadlock there, and the teams will go elsewhere. But the one thing I got from that game, and I think we all know this anyway, these two teams will be battling now between here and the end of the season. They're both up for this title race.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously Cliftonville are still in there. Got to give them their dues. They're still sort of hanging on the coattails there. Not going away lightly. But yeah, I mean, these two, they were the 2 best sides in the country last year, and it looks like it's going to be the same again. Even at Larne in terms of 2023, the only, in terms at Inver anyway, or overall, sorry, the only defeat they've had against Linfield, if I'm not mistaken, was the cup quarter final there, the penalty shootout. So I think Larne will be happy enough for their record against Linfield this year. But the point's not the end of the world for them. But I think after taking that early lead, they'll maybe be a little bit disappointed they didn't sort of capitalise on Linfield when they had the chance.
So now Linfield will go on. We talked about it last week on the podcast that they've got this game against Crusaders. No doubt by the time the majority of you are listening to this podcast, you know the result of that game. Sticking with Larne, something that emerged over the past few days has been that they have announced that they have a new minority investor. They are the Vic or the Vec family. They come on board.
I think it's Vec. I thought it was Vic, but I think it's Vec.
They join American businessman Scott Chris.
We'll go with that.
As a as a minority owner. Kenny Bruce is still majority owner, looks after day to day. So, they're hyping up his connections in baseball. They have connection to St. Louis Browns, Cleveland Guardians. they have all these connections to American sport. There was, for me, in the summer, seeing players come from Real Salt Lake, thinking, what's going on here? What's the connection? And perhaps they were in and amongst it there, but Lauren bring more people in. It's not just Kenny Bruce. And, there's been lots of talk over the past few weeks of investment coming into the league. And Lauren, who had seemingly had plenty of investment, they add a bit more. What it will mean long term, we'll have to see. But clearly they seem like a enticing proposition.
One thing that Kenny Bruce said, whenever he first took over Lauren, and something that I know he still maintains to this day, is that it's not just about Lauren on the pitch. On the pitch obviously is the main factor of a football club, of course, but it's so much else. Like, and what he's done in the town, with the new Academy of Sport, the training centre, the investment he's made into the town, the buy-in he's got from local businesses and local people. So he's a smart enough businessman to know that you can't get the success on the pitch without having it off the pitch. I'm a baseball fan myself, so whenever I heard the name Vec, I was like, oh, wow, really? That's quite a, if you mention the name Vec to any sort of like a baseball fan or journalist, immediately it's like, oh, right, okay, people sit up and take notice. So he's not bringing in small time hitters here. These are big hitters, and I think he knows, like I said, these are people who have a passion and an interest, and more importantly, I suppose, the business know-how when it comes to running sports clubs. And every decision, or pretty much every decision, certainly anyway, that Kenny Bruce has made off the pitch seems to have paid off, and has definitely had some thought to it. So I know it's not something he'll have taken lightly.
Fascinating to see how many of these owners at the high end of the sport and a variety of sports are diversifying. Kroenke has Arsenal, the LA Rams, others, I believe, across the board. You say this guy comes from a family that's well known in that sport. He's got his hand in football or soccer now. So clearly they want to have many fingers in different pies. It's another American joining the Irish League. So again, it's all money above my head. It's something that's going on, and as what many people in my situation say, I wish them all the best. So there we go. See what happens. We're no more updating the banger stuff. The only update we have is, unsurprisingly, I'm still dosed, which is why I sound bizarre. You haven't been able to get it, so you've avoided it. The whole family was able to avoid my sniffles and my coughs. But the weather's been poor, probably didn't help it, as we all know. Glentoran against Cliftonville was a game that's not on this schedule, so Cliftonville weren't able to keep pace with the other teams. That could have been a chance for them to gain 2 points on both of them. It rained a lot on Friday evening, Saturday morning. The oval pitch is not adept to taking on a significant amount of rain, and it was a significant amount of rain. We saw a lot of games in the championship in particular go by the wayside. I'm sure a lot of teams are going, happy days, we can get these January signings in. And we'll talk about a couple more January signings as we go along. But we will actually go to the game up at the Coleraine Showgrounds, where Loughgall were able to capitalise on their victory against Dungannon Swifts with a 3-1 defeat of Coleraine. And who's at the centre of it once again? Benji McGee, doing exactly what he was doing last week, trying to be the defender, taking the ball on the hop, and his goal was really well taken. He just shows how dangerous he is. But the other player who stepped up big for Loughgall was Nathaniel Ferris, who was able to score a penalty and pick up another goal to make it the 3-1 victory to them. He is now the highest scorer for Loughgall since the year 2000. Big lad getting the goals in for Loughgall, so that's great for them after such a poor run. They get 2 wins in a row. I felt as though Coleraine were going to be a team that could be got at, and they were. But of course, what the real story is coming off the back of this is that it's another defeat for Coleraine. They are just totally down in the dumps, awful run, and there had been significant questions around their manager Owen Kearney. You could hear at the end of that game between them and Loughgall, there was significant boos from the showground support. Off the back of that, the Coleraine board have come out and made a statement saying that we're back in Oran. We understand the results are awful, they're poor, but we're backing him. He's been a big part of this club beforehand, and there has been other people connected to the club who've been calling out some of the personal abuse that Owen Kearney has received. We talked last week, and we saw last week that Gary Boyle stepped away from his post as the manager of Newry, citing that he felt as though some of the abuse that he was getting was really getting to him. Clearly something similar is happening to Coleraine. As fans, we all want to voice our opinion, and sometimes it's very directed at the people that we are frustrated at. But I do think perhaps we all have to take a step back, know that ultimately this is somebody's job, it's football, and you can share your opinion, of course, but by the sounds of it, and look, I haven't heard any of any of those two men that I've referenced, but people are saying that it is crossing the line.
Yeah, I'm the same. I haven't spoke directly to either of them, but two men that have been in around the game long enough to know that for results, there is going to be criticism. I'm sure they're well aware of that, and they're happy enough to receive it. But it takes it to a whole new level whenever it's getting, seemingly so we've heard anyway, that it's getting personal and attacking families, and that's, as you said, we're all football fans, we all get frustrated at times, and like I said, like Owen Kearney and Gary Boyd, they're big enough men to take a bit of flack when it's aimed at them or their team's performance. That's fine, but when it starts to get personal and getting families involved, people really have to take a step back and go, right, what am I doing here? What's going on? Especially, there's no excuse for any sort of abuse or grief into anybody, but you look at what Owen Kearney has done at Coleraine, and how I appreciate it. And as I'm not a Coleraine fan, I'm not telling them how they should feel here, because I know it's a dreadful run. Owen Kearney knows that more than anybody, how bad a run it is. The man's probably having sleepless nights trying to fix it. So if there's anybody who knows, same as Gary Boyd at Newry, I spoke to Gary a few times this year after difficult games, and he was always able to front up, spoke to me after every game, and I know he does that with everybody. So a bit of flack here and there, managers can take, you kind of take as part and parcel of it, but what's not part and parcel of it is when it gets personal or it gets family involved.
Well, let's reflect someone that is there weekly at Coleraine games. John McNabb, who listen to this podcast will know is a regular contributor here. He tweeted out the statement saying the abuse that Oran has received has been nothing short of abhorrent and totally unacceptable. Results this year haven't been good enough, no denying it, but if someone can turn the tide, it's Oran. I get the fans are frustrated, we all are, but there's a line that's being crossed. And I think the interesting thing from that statement from the board is that they're fronting up and they are saying results are not what we want them to be, and we understand that, but we are moving forward and we believe he's the right man. Outside of the fact that it's been up and down all year, 4 losses in a row is tough, especially that one against Ballymena, who hadn't scored in whatever it was 10 hours before they do, and then they went out. What is it now? Like, how many goals have Ballymena scored? So Ballymena scored like 15 goals, and a fifth of them were scored against them on Boxing Day. It just shows. But sometimes when you're in a funk, these results are going to happen, and unfortunately for Coleraine, it's just more difficult games await them. Give credit to Loughgall, that's a great bounce back for them. They're now up to 7th. They're top of the bottom half, and they'll want now to continue this run on, keep things going, and the team who want to snap out of this run that they're on, and they're going to hope that a new manager bounce is going to be a part of this, is Newry. Dungannon shake off that frustration and that anger of whatever refereeing decisions they felt didn't go their way against Loughgall, and they rout Newry at home 5-0, and it could have been more. Gallagher with a first half hat-trick that also included a missed penalty. That is a great thing to do when your team is missing who had been your top goal scorer for the season. Matty Lusty chat that it could be a collarbone injury, so no official reports there, but that could still be a couple of weeks. And Dungannon looked to have had a better one recently, but realistically they're still only 3 points off 11th. So that'll be a great buffer to increase between them and Newry, and we'll talk about the situation with Newry in a second. But let's give Dungannon and Macquarie kudos. I'm sure they've been wanting that. They've been wanting to get that out of their system. All their nice play has not resulted in goals consistently. They all came at once, but Newry played their role as well, because they just look completely deflated.
I was actually covering this game on Saturday. I was doing the live text updates for it, and there was points in that first half where I was struggling to keep up with what Dungannon were doing. As you said, massive kudos have to go to Dungannon, first of all. I've seen them a few times this year, including that one on Boxing Day at Loughgall, and they've looked good, and just sometimes they're lacking, especially now with Lusty not there, they're just lacking that little bit of clinical edge. But I think I said to Rodney in the interview afterwards, do you feel that's been coming? Like a bit of an outburst of goals, and I genuinely think it has been, for some of their play. And Gallagher, by the way, also hit the post in the first half too, so he could have had 5 or more, just in that first half alone. But yeah, listen, as poor as Newry were, Dungannon were very good. They were, the old saying goes, you can only beat what's put in front of you, and they absolutely did that. And I think obviously Gallagher was fantastic, but a word too for Kieran Dillon. The guy is just controlling things in that midfield. He scored in Boxing Day too, but everything good that Dungannon do goes through him in that midfield at the minute. So yeah, they obviously they probably looked at the other scores and were a bit disappointed to see Ballymena had won to sort of keep on their tails. But as you say, they're sort of opening up that buffer now between the rest and Newry at the bottom.
I love me some Keelan Dillon. We were waxing lyrical up in that gantry. He's the pivot for that team, and he makes the ball work. And when you have these nippy little players out wide that Dungannon do, they're happy to do it. They can go direct when they want to as well, and they win that game out without Lusty and without McGee, and there's a real youthful backbone to that team with the likes of Galvin and Gallagher and Scott. They'll now want to go into 2024, push on, thinking we could have got a couple of results in a row if things went our way. So 5 goals will always do you a bit of good, and apparently scoring 3 goals against your Derby rivals gives you a huge amount of confidence. Ballymena, 2 wins in a row? My goodness, are they getting a nosebleed with the form table? They went out 1-0 against the Glenavon side who just could not get it going up top. They huffed and they puffed and they couldn't get it. And it takes a bit of a wonder goal from Fraser Taylor. Everybody's been hyping this man up as, he's a bit tasty. He can do a bit of running. He can do a bit of jiving up near the top of the pitch. He was nowhere near the top of the pitch when he picked up the ball, but he decided to go for a mazy run anyway. If I was some of those Glenavon defenders, I maybe would have tackled him along the way, but maybe they just couldn't believe that he could do what he did. Massive run all the way up the pitch, and he gets the only goal of the game on 36 minutes. And Ballymena on dreamland. 2 wins in a row.
They do like a bit of jiving in Ballymena, so that was a good reference there. But yeah, it was brilliant. You said somebody put a leg in there. I'm sure those in the main stand at Mournview were letting their thoughts known about what maybe should have happened to him on the way to goal. But yeah, it's a superb goal, and good to see for Ballymena. I felt for Jim Irvin and the team, in that dreadful run they were on, because he's another one who's been getting some stick from fans and whatnot this season, but obviously still well in the thick of it down there. But you mentioned Glenavon there, and times again, another side I've seen a bit of this year. They play some good football and they have some good attacking threats, but I think you mentioned they're huffing and puffing, and that's something they do quite a bit of at times. I saw the other day that we'll be talking transfers in a minute, that Zach Barr ended up going to Portadown. I think maybe that's one that Glenavon should have been looking at, somebody like him, a clinical goal scorer. It's something I think they're sort of lacking there. Like I said, they do have talent up there, Prendergast and McCloskey's injured himself, but Malone and there's probably some others I'm forgetting about, Peter Campbell. But yeah, in terms of Ballymena, great win, great performance.
It's a lot to put on the shoulders of Aaron Prendergast, who is still technically a teenager, to be your one and only striker, and for him to consistently get the goals. It's been a difficult run for them. I think everyone's like, wow, in Kim McDonald and everything's been great. And it wasn't the start, and then it was. And then because they've had to play Larne, then Linfield, then the Cruise, and before then they do get a win against Newry, another team who fired plenty of goals past them. This defeat at home against Ballymena, I think, will sting. It will be a bit of a bump back down to earth, that they aren't completely out of relegation issues just yet. There is 8 points between them and Ballymena now, so they'll feel comfortable enough that they won't have to worry about it. But If they do go on a bad run and a team like Ballymena can sneak up, they'll not want that. And look, they've done plenty of their own jiving, changing things up with transfers. So they have new bodies coming in. McDonald's getting his players back, and at the top of the pitch was clearly something that they'll be looking to address, and they are attempting to address. Ballymena, they'll still continue to address. I saw Carfield on the team sheet on Saturday. That'll be a welcome addition. I'm sure it was good to have McMurray score last week. So it's taken months, but 2 wins in a row. You've got to say, well done, Jim Irvin. You've been able to tighten things up at the back, and now you need that bit of luck. You need that mazy run from one box to the other sometimes. That's what you need. Or you need a penalty decision to go your way. So I've been very, very critical of Ballymena that most of their points they've got this season have been kind of snatch and grab jobs. But the past 2 weeks have been performances where they've dug in. And look, they were under the cosh from Glenavon late on, but Glenavon just could not get the ball in the box to the right person at the right time. So a reality check, I think, for Glenavon and Ballymena. Look, there's 6 points between them and Newry. Now, that feels like a cavern if you are Newry looking up. And for Ballymena, you'll still want that to be bigger. There's a lot of the season still to be played, but it just shows you how quickly things can move at the bottom.
Yeah, you sort of mentioned there just before we move on about Glenavon. I'd spoken to Stephen McDonald after the Crusaders defeat, and he was quite sort of philosophical about it. Like it was, in fairness, Larne and the Crusaders, there's not really a much harder run in the league nearly than that at times, but I think after that Ballymena one, I'd say it would be a different story.
Sticking with Newry, they've got a manager's post which is currently open. There was suggestions that Warmpoint Town's boss Barry Gray could be in the frame. Of course, he's ex-Cliftonville manager. He is synonymous with Warmpoint because he brought them up from football obscurity all the way up to the top division. Of course, recent times they saw relegation. Then let's not get into the shenanigans that happened during the summer where they were demoted due to a licensing issue all the way down to PIL when they were hoping to potentially be within a playoffs reach of getting into the top flight again. And an hour before recording here this evening, he has stepped down as boss of Warmpoint Town mid-season. And where does that leave him now? I have no sources. I've got no reporting bar just chat and stuff online that says it could be on the cards. Barry Gray going from Warmpoint to Newry? That seems like you're crossing the Rubicon there.
Yeah, crossing the Moore ultimatum, as I've heard it called recently. Yeah, I mean, maybe we're putting 2 and 2 together and getting 5 here, but with Newry, I saw they tweeted the other day, that they'd be closing expressions of interest. That we're recording on New Year's Day here, they'd be closing expressions of interest at 5 o'clock today, and all of a sudden, just after 5 o'clock, Barry Gray announces his resignation. It's a bit suspicious. I mean, we could all be made to look like fools here, but it looks a pretty good cert that he would go there. Now, I mean, you say he's a great manager. He worked wonders with Warmpoint, and has been at Cliftonville too. Is it a bit much for him to pull Newry out of this? I mean, 6 points, you say it looks a lot now, given the way Ballymena are going and the way that Newry are. But yeah, I'm actually due to be at Windsor Park this weekend for Warmpoint's cup tie with Linfield, so that'll be interesting to see, no Barry Gray in the dugout. So I'll be speaking to whoever maybe is who replaces him on Saturday.
It's not like a blood rivalry between the two teams, but there's clearly a lot of local pride going on there, and players have swapped between the two a fair bit as Warmpoint's ascension dovetailed with Newry's demotion and complete restart as a club. And reading the statement here from Warmpoint, they say that they have accepted the resignation of Barry Gray. They thank him for his commitment, obviously, for a second stint as manager. The impact of being denied a place in the Premiership playoff based on sporting merit earlier this year has changed the strategic focus of the club and led to a more realistic and time-bound approach to building the club back to where we belong. In a stepped approach, we remain focused on securing promotion from the PIL to the Championship This remains our sole objective this season. Perhaps just the timelines not being exactly what Gray wants at this time of his career. Does he want to get up to the top flight? It wouldn't be too far away from him going from the Point to Newry. Interesting to see how Newry fans will embrace him, and he gets another bite of the cherry of top flight football. We await with bated breath to see who does get that gig. There's only 12 obviously in the top flight, so I'm sure based on his credentials, he's done it before. He's kept that Warren Point side up numerous times. He's brought them back up again. We talked last year about the Portadown gig going up and down. That's why people say Nat Curry was a good appointment, because he could have an eye on both. Perhaps he have an eye on both as well. So we'll see how that all goes. Just while we're talking about managers, we've talked a fair bit about Paddy McLaughlin over the past couple of weeks. Just questions over his status with Derry City. Questions no more. He is no longer the assistant manager in Derry. He is a man who's been linked significantly with a potential opening at Glentoran if it comes up. There's also been people that would connect him with Coleraine if they were to go full time, and if Owen Kearney was to move on. With him being out on the market, does that put even pressure on the hot seats of, well, those two clubs in particular, but any boss out there knowing that Paddy McLaughlin is now back on the market, baby?
Yeah, I mean, it's a strange one. First of all, the way it was worded, he was stood down from duties, and everyone's kind of going, what does that mean? Why? What's going on? But clearly he's not there anymore. It's a bit of a strange one. I mean, he only joined, what was it? Correct me if I'm wrong, was it part of the season, League of Ireland season already started last year when he joined, or just early on? I can't remember exactly.
Yep.
You know, go back
before the end of the season.
Yeah, going back to his hometown club, and with Rory Higgins. I don't know. That's speculation and all what's happened there. But yeah, I think you're right. There's certainly, I'm sure that'll ramp up, because even when he was still employed by Derry City, he was being linked with not just any job that come up, but any job that might come up. It seemed his job, his name, sorry, was being thrown around there. I saw someone say as your late candidate for the Newry City job, and Derry to Newry is a bit of a commute, but he might do it. But yeah, I think it will. I mean, we've talked for days about Warren Feeney at Glentoran, and obviously now it looks as though certainly Warren Kearney's getting the backing of the Coleraine board, so maybe that'll put to bed any of those rumours. But yeah, rightly now, anytime any sort of job, even the League of Ireland, I saw him being linked with Cork City a while ago as well. Any job that come probably on the island of Ireland, Paddy McLaughlin's name will be in there now for sure.
Will not be the last time over the next few weeks. I think we'll be chatting Paddy McLaughlin, but he's a man on the market. Just didn't work out for him over back at Derry, and we will see if we see a return for him to an Irish League hot seat or not. Going back to the games this weekend, I thought there could be a chance of a shock down at Seaview for Carrick Rangers, but it was Old Faithful number 1 and Old Faithful number 2 who got the goals and combined very well to take care of business and get a 2-0 win against Carrick Rangers. It's a big week now for the Crews. They're going to host Linfield, and then they obviously have an Irish Cup tie this weekend. This was a pretty even affair between two teams. I don't think Carrick really got any attacking mojo going, and Crusaders were able to make their chances count.
That's one probably that Carrick will target. Obviously, that real awful result they had there at the start of the season, probably wanting to put that one to bed. But yep, Heatley and Owens, that's the oldest combo in the book now in the Irish League. Really, there's not many more older combos in age or playing time in the league. But yeah, they keep getting it done for Crusaders. I was at Mourneview just before Christmas whenever Owens got his 250th goal. Heatley scored that day too. They've still got it. Listen, Crusaders have they're a fair bit adrift in terms of title talk, that's for sure. But listen, Crusaders have their naysayers and people about the way they play, and it doesn't work every time out. But certainly, whenever you're up scrapping games against the likes of Carrick, who are up and down, but they can certainly mix it with some of the big boys. And sometimes you need to turn to the old faithfuls to get the job done.
I thought if Carrick got themselves in, dug in on that game, and they could maybe get something from it, but I think it was more of a case of the crews just pushing on, working the ball, and it was a very simple goal for the opener. Big long ball, head on from Owens, and he's able to run on to it and get the ball in the back of the net, and then a more unusual kind of goal from Owens. The ball comes in, and he's usually just see him knocking in with his head. He kind of like swings his boot at it and pokes it in late on when Carrick are down to 10 men. The red card for Carrick, may as well talk about it as he always try to. Second yellow for Curtis Forsyth. He just kind of pulls back, falls into Heatley as he tries to run on. I think that's a fairly fair second yellow, and can't complain about that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's just one of those ones you say, like, it's something a tackle you can't really make when you're on the yellow card. It's no cliche, but you're giving the referee an opportunity to give you the yellow card there.
So you're listening to this in 2024. The January transfer window is officially open. Plenty of teams have been revealing their little presents that they've already tied down before the window opened. Now things are starting to move. There's been a few rumoured ones that haven't happened just yet. Some that can be confirmed. We're waiting for our big one. Still no news on Ben Kennedy or anything like that. But we look into it. A lot of it seems to be around the championship. You mentioned him earlier on in the podcast. Portadown have had a difficult time in the championship. They have had a few injuries, but they pretty much put together another brand new squad, and it didn't really come together sternly at the start, and they're going to do further tinkering and actually a big signing. I think in the championship. We looked around about 2 weeks ago. If you haven't listened to it, we did a podcast here talking about what the January needs are for each club, and you can tell some of the teams at the bottom of the league needed a striker, and oftentimes as fans we go, who's the top goal scorer in the championship? What are they like? Can we maybe add them to my team? Particularly if you're struggling at the bottom, and the top goal scorer of the championship is Zach Barr, who was a Newington player and is now a Portadown player. So Niall Curry adds a bit more firepower to his side while also weakening another side. There's actually weirdly been one or two other players that have signed for Portadown that Portadown have announced, but the other clubs have, including Dundela, who've said that Craig Dobbin, a midfielder's gone to them. Jack Henderson from Bangor has announced that Bangor have announced that he's leaving, going to Portadown. So Niall Curry is sticking by what he said in the media, that he's adding and he's strengthening this team, and he's doing it by weakening the teams around him.
Yeah, and getting business done early. He's doing his business like they do in FIFA and Football Manager. Just get in there early and sign everybody. Yeah, the big one. I mean, Zach Barr. I mean, that's a cracking signing. We were talking about like Glenavon. Like I said, a lot of good attacking talent without maybe having too much strength and depth up there. Somebody like them, Zach Barr, I think would have been a perfect signing. That's no disrespect to Newington. I'm sure they would have wanted to keep him. They don't just have to give up their top goal scorer to whoever comes in, but clearly, he's wanted to move as well, and it is a double whammy, as you say. We have strengthened their side while weakening another side in the division. Yeah, I mean they're getting things done fast.
He is a big burly striker. He's a big man, which I think a lot of teams would be looking out for. I guess it seems a bit old school, but I oftentimes I think it's what fans are looking for. Get a big man in the box and see what they can do. So that's what they're adding with him. Elsewhere in the championship, actually, Ards have parted company with Matthew Tipton, who has been their manager for I think a season and a half now or so, maybe 2. But it just hasn't went for him this season. He's down, languishing near the bottom. Last year was a far better season for them, thanks to that man Adam Sally being the top goal scorer in the league last year and knocking loads. They haven't been able to replace him, and unfortunately Matthew Tipton is no longer boss there, and Ards will look to reset and restart again with somebody in the hot seat there.
Matthew Tipton's a name that obviously is well synonymous with Irish League football, with Portadown being one of them. But yeah, I think that's without wishing to oversimplify it, if I can speak. Taking the salary out of that team, you take all those goals out and don't replace them. I mean, there's only one way you're going, and ultimately, I think, regardless of that, the manager pays the price for that. We see it time after time.
Elsewhere, Lockoff said Jay Boyd is going back to the Cruise, which I think, if I was a Cruise fan, I'd be saying absolutely get that young player in our side and make him a rotational piece for us. Build for next season. He will be a cog in that team no matter what next year, and get him up to speed with them. I thought he's probably in that variety of big birdie striker as well, but he's got a little touch of pace as well. Good shot. So yeah, why not get him in there? And particularly if this injury crisis does not subside, he could fit in there. Plus, it's not like Crews have got a whole load of players of that ilk, so I'm sure Loughgall will also be looking out there to try and find a striker who can fill that role. We've seen recently now that Jack Scott, his contract with Linfield was terminated a couple of weeks ago due to a disciplinary matter, is now joining Coleraine. He is a nippy little fullback, so that gives them a bit of strength and a bit of depth, and is the first piece that Owen Kearney can add to try and retool this faltering team.
Just a touch as well on Jay Boyd and Loughgall. I think that'll be a big miss for Loughgall. Obviously, there's not another one. Our strikers been a lot of talk of in January is Benji McGee. All these goals he's scoring. And all the talk is, who in the top six is going to take him again. I don't think Loughgall are going to part company with him all too easily. But you would worry for them. If in January they lost Boyd and McGee. But yeah, certainly it's one of those lone players that if Jay Boyd wasn't on loan from Crusaders, you sort of say, yeah, I could see Jay Boyd at Crusaders. So it's him going back there. I think it makes total sense. And Jack Scott, listen, disciplinary issues. There's certainly a player there. A good solid defender. And at the minute, I think a big problem for Coleraine is their strength and depth, as you're seeing. That's so add another body in there and a good quality player. If he can keep things good on and off the pitch, should be a good addition.
Westendorf's loan, I also believe, is perhaps up for Ballymena. He's a man who was kind of in and out of the side, so he's now returning to Larne. He can maybe come back, of course. So that just adds to Ballymena trying to add a few more bodies. So we will report it as soon as we know who's coming in and out. I will report any official transfers. The only other side is Anna United, who I've seen to be doing quite a lot of dealing with Glenavon. They take back their player Jamie Dorn, who's a young teenage midfielder, and they send back Cohen Henderson on loan. A little swap there. And Jackson Nesbitt also goes to the Anna. They also take on Owen Taggart. And Thomas Burns joins as well. So that's the transfers that have come in so far. Will they be ready for what many people probably would highlight as one of their favourite days of the Irish League calendar? And that is Irish Cup 5th round day. I remember, was it COVID? They decided to call this the first round proper, but it's back to being the 5th round. I think it was the 5th round there last week. We'll not go into absolute full details about all these games, but there's a few interesting stories that could pop up. First one, of course, is Friday. Coleraine against Cliftonville. Cliftonville fresh, haven't not played against Glentoran. I'm sure they would be frustrated they didn't have that game, but they go up to Coleraine for their first game of the new year. Little rivalry between these two teams. Obviously, Cliftonville have this uncomfortable record in the Irish Cup, which they think they've got like some sort of curse. But can you see Coleraine bouncing back a bit of cup magic and kickstarting their year and restarting their season with a bit of a bang?
Yeah, possibly. I think probably both of these teams, if the draw was made, if both looked at it and thought, God, 5th round, hitting another Premiership team. You want to. That's one you'd rather sort of see quarterfinal, semi-final if you're one of these teams. But at the same time, if we were talking about this as a league fixture next week, you'd probably be saying that's a Cliftonville win all over it. But it's a cup at the end of the day. Coleraine, I'm sure, will be coming out now after the statement, back in Oran Kearney, kind of putting to bed any rumours that are flying around about him, and say it's cup game, Friday night lights. Listen, it's all cliches, but it's all got the makings of maybe an upset, as you say, that kind of Cliftonville hoodoo in the cup. I don't know whether it really affects the players as much as such at all, but it does seem to kind of get heavier and heavier every year that they don't make a final or that they get knocked out before then. As oh, there's the curse again. But yeah, it's a tough one for both of them. Like I said, I'm sure both of them looked at this draw and went, "Oh, really?"
You look at some of these players as well. It's kind of funny. We talk about it. It's not like we're sitting here as 50-year-old men either. But you talk about the history of all Cliftonville and the Irish Cup. Like Cliftonville could have won the Irish Cup in the year 2000, and there'd be plenty of players who weren't even born to see it. That is like, I don't think Ben Wilson would have been around if they won it in 2000. So it just shows you that there's a long time has passed, and ultimately every team has history, good, bad, or indifferent. So hey, maybe this will be the team that could change things up for Cliftonville. Key things for the Reds here: they're going all the way up to Coleraine Friday night after that break, and sometimes you can come in a little bit cold, a little bit rusty after not having those competitive reps week to week. Coleraine have something to prove. Cliftonville need to come out of the traps early and fast. Don't let this become a contest with 30 minutes to go, because a big looping header from Mitchell or a little getting on a sneaky little ball from McDade, and then you're chasing the game with 25 minutes to go. Cliftonville need to assert their dominance on this team, get the goal, and try and manage the game the way that they can. They've got the players to do it, so they'll do their best to try and make sure that happens.
It'll be interesting to see sort of what the crowd will be. Obviously, at Coleraine Showgrounds is always a pretty sizable crowd, no matter what. But it'll be interesting to see kind of with Oran Kearney this week, whether it'll be kind of a defiant crowd or whether it'll be a little bit of a mixed atmosphere at it. So I think that could have a big telling on the game as well. And yeah, as you said, there is that kind of recent sort of spark between these two. And Cliftonville, coming in, you wonder, would you rather come into this having had lumps kicked out of you on a boggy pitch at the Oval the week before, or do you come into it a bit sort of undercooked? You never really know how it's going to work out.
So that's the Friday night game. That's been streamed. You then have no other top flight duos elsewhere. So we've got a whole slate beyond that as either Bourne Central, or we've got some shocks on the cards. Queens hosting Ballymena. Scream like that. That's like probably on the minor scale of the shock. So can Ballymena go up to the Dub and get a result? 1:30 early kickoff as well. Queens are doing all right in the PIL. They'll be up for it. They have a bit of pedigree in the cup. If I was a Ballymena fan, I'd be a little bit spooked about this one.
I think you're right. I was at Windsor earlier on in the year. It was the Queens play Linfield in the League Cup, and they had the better of them for the first 45 anyway. I think ultimately a combination of quality and fitness told in the end for Linfield, but they certainly didn't run away with it. And Queens played some good football, and yes, they had to sit back and do a lot of defending as you'd expect them to do. But I think even just looking at it on paper, Queens v Ballymena just has something very cup upsetty written all over it, if that's even a word. So yeah, I wouldn't really be looking forward to this one too much if I was a Ballymena fan.
Will it be another day for Fraser Taylor to do his magic? He is not on that list of players who is away in January. He's got the entire season, so they can continue to build around him. Elsewhere at 1:30, you've got Knockbreda hosting Glenavon, and then Oxford Sunnyside from Lurgan hosting Ballymacash. Knockbreda have had a terrible season this year. They were able to sneak by in the playoff and stick around in the championship. Most of their better players then went on, and they've just had a really, really difficult year. Barely been able to scrape together any collection of points, barely a win. So, I mean, Glenavon need to go there up to Breda Park and take care of business pretty much. I was there for a decent amount of Knockbreda's actually cup run last year, where they were able to beat St Mary's, and I mean they were so close to putting out Dungannon, bar like a bit of a very, very, very late flurry from them to get back. So Glenavon should have the ability to beat the poorest team in the championship. Ballymacash, Oxford Sunnyside, like I think you'll see for Oxford Sunnyside, they'll have a few names that you'll recognise from Irish League years gone by, and of course they missed out on being in the PIL via the playoffs in the summer. So they'll be a tough enough task for Ballymacash side, who have had a decent season so far, but probably not as dominant as some people might have expected them to. Glentoran host Anna. Will they get that oval pitch warmed up? Will they get all that water away? Will the rain come and wash it away again? Of course, Anna United know all about a waterlogged pitch. Their pitch was under maybe a couple of inches of water only a few weeks ago, so that was able to dry out. So perhaps they'll be ready with gills on. Anna beat Portadown on Boxing Day. Didn't go as well against Bangor, so they're going against a tricky side, Nana, because we talk about how Cliftonville could be a bit cold. Could Glentoran be a bit cold? It's at the Oval. The pressure of going against a championship team. I do think Glentoran will win out comfortably here, but I do see this as one of those things where people will consider this as a opportune time for a shock.
Yeah, I think so, and I think it's one of those ones too. With it being at home, usually say, "Oh, that would favour the Premiership team," but that's one of the ones where if Glentoran don't start off well, and even the first 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, don't get a goal, they're maybe struggling to string passes together. You know what it's like. It'll not take long before there'll be a few people sort of shifting nervously in their seats and letting them know what to think of them. So that if Anna can kind of keep them at bay even at that, then who knows? But again, it's one of those ones you would like to think certainly that the class and the professionalism and the fitness and whatnot will tell in the end. But yeah, it's one of those ones I think if Glentoran don't get off to a quick start, all of a sudden it could get a wee bit nervy in the East.
That is one of the 3 o'clock games. The rest of these are all 3 o'clock this Saturday. Ballyclare hosts Strabane Athletic. Nice little run for Strabane, but Ballyclare are a very capable championship side, and they should not have any hassle there. Dungannon, after thumping Newry, welcome Willowbank from the amateur ranks, and if Dungannon up for it, that should be a very easy victory for them if they play up to their abilities. Institute host Crumlin Star. So Crumlin Star go up to the Brandywell. Could be tricky. Institute have shown bright this season, but they've faltered at times. They've required a lot of late goals. This is a big tie for Crumlin. I think coming off the back of that Stevenson's Cup loss, could this be their redemption? We'll have to see. Loughgall host Rosemount. You got to see that as a Loughgall victory there. Then there's a few more tricky ties. Crews and Linfield both host managerless teams. Ards and Warrenpoint with temporary managers in the dugout for them. It would be a tough ask for either of those two teams, even with maybe a bounce from somebody coming into the hot seat. We didn't see a bounce without Gary Boyle in the Newry hot seat, so it may be difficult. You've got to think this should be a fairly run-of-the-mill victory for Crews and Linfield if they play up to their ability.
Yeah, I'm for Windsor on Saturday, covering Linfield Warrenpoint for the radio. So I would imagine, or I'm expecting, perhaps a few goals from Linfield. But last time I went to see Linfield in a cup, as I said, that was against Queens, and they certainly didn't make it easy for them that night. So you never really know what you're going to get with a side that's just lost a manager, particularly one like Barry Gray that has had so much time and experience there at Warrenpoint. How are the players going to react to it? Is it going to be, right, let's go out and show everyone what we're made of, that we're not just Barry Gray, because they still have some good players on that Warrenpoint side. A lot of the guys stuck with them, even from the championship. So they didn't do a complete sort of, implode the squad and rebuild. So, yeah, we'll see what they can bring. Ards, as I said, yeah, they're struggling in the league. You kind of, whenever you see these sort of championship versus premiership ties, it's kind of, they're doing well in the championship. Maybe they can keep that bounce going. But yeah, you have to feel as well for likes of Ards, maybe more so than Warrenpoint. It's almost kind of like, write this one off, get back to it with the league. The following week, it's more important for them, that kind of way. So yeah, I struggle to see upsets in either of those. But maybe come 5 o'clock on Saturday, I'll be reporting on a huge upset at Windsor.
I'll be a real highlight for you when it comes to your burgeoning career on the radio, Mr. Strange. Ballymallard go to Newry City. Will they have a full-time boss in charge? We'll have to see, but that will be one treated with trepidation. Ballymallard haven't been pulling up roses in the championship, but they've gotten a few scalps, and they will feel confident going in that on their day they could give Newry a real scare, and Newry will not relish the chance of being knocked out by a championship side in Ballymallard. So they need to do something they have not been doing consistently all year, and that is score the goals to win.
And Ballymallard almost seem to be like the Carrick of the championship this season. You know, that there's one week that they're really mixing it with the big boys, and the next you think there's a loss of it that shouldn't have happened. But yeah, if ever there's a time Ballymallard wanted to have a Premiership tie, it's Newry at the minute. So you hope for Newry's sake that they don't, in a way they don't succumb to an upset, because the confidence, that what I saw in those players at Dungannon on Saturday, confidence is completely shot, and their squad's looking pretty threadbare at the minute. They had some injuries coming into it anyway, and then they lost Lorcan Ford and Adam Carroll, and they look like they could be, maybe if not long-term absentees, and certainly I wouldn't imagine they'll be back on Saturday anyway.
Tough gets more difficult for Newry. Newington hosts Dundela in a all-championship tie. That's been a bit of a goal fest sometimes when those two teams have met. They'll be weaker because of departures out of Portadown, but could be one to look for plenty of goals. Bangor take on Dergview up at the Clandyboy. It's a chance for them. Another all-championship side, so a great opportunity for both of those sides to progress. Whoever wins out in that one. Then the final two games, I think, are probably the two real ties of the round. First, Carrick Rangers versus Portadown, the Curry Bowl. Portadown, who have had a tricky year in the championship. Then you have Carrick, who, like you said, have been up and down. You have ex-Carrick boss, now Curry, going to Carrick. It feels like this could be a bit more of, what is an even affair, because I think Carrick have got a far better 1-11 than Portadown do. But you've got to say, if when it comes to a competitive game where you have a side giving it a go against a Premiership side, this is probably one of the more closer interdivisional games.
Yeah, first of all, I think you need to trademark the Curry Bowl before that starts getting news elsewhere. But yeah, you're bang on there in terms of, like I said, Carrick are up and down in the league this season. They seem to have Glentoran's number, but then they'll have sort of really poor days like they did at Crusaders at the start of the year. So yeah, that's certainly one I think that Portadown will fancy, especially given the history with Nam Curry there. It's one he'll want to win, and we don't know if some or any or all of those new signings will be available or registered yet. I don't know. I don't know how cup registration works. I'm not into those technicalities. But
look, unfortunately, clubs don't usually know how cup registration works, which is why we always have registration drama.
So,
put it out of what they're in the semi-final of the League Cup.
Yeah,
they were able to take out the Crews.
Yeah.
So in the cup, they're doing all right. They aren't doing great in the league consistently. So this could be a very intriguing affair. The other one is a repeat of, was it a quarterfinal last year?
Yes.
The Welders and Larne. Larne were able to outlast the Welders down at the Blanchflower. Another chance for a showcase at the Blanchflower for a top side to go there. Could it be a case of second chance lucky for the Welders, or is this for Larne to show that they are unfazable?
Again, one of those ones you would like to think certainly that Larne would have a comfortable enough afternoon, but yeah, last showed that they didn't at all. One thing that might actually work in Larne's favour is the fact that their former keeper, Mike Argridis, who has left the Welders literally last week, he's gone back to Canada, so he'll not be in goal. He was kind of their tormentor-in-chief last year. He seemed determined to show that they never should let him go. So yeah, it'll be, outlasting them the right way. That's exactly what they did last year, and I think it was another one of those maybe that, I don't know if it was a bit of legs, a bit of fitness, or just a bit of quality in the finish. I think it was Andy Ryan got the goal that day, if I'm not mistaken, that took Larne through. So yeah, listen, it's a tough one. It's another one I think that Larne looked at and thought could have been worse, but they'll certainly not be taken for granted.
The Welders are a very top-heavy side. They have, not that Parkhouse and McClelland are starting every week, but those are players who have done it in the championship and scored a bag of goals. And they also add in young Tiernan O'Connor, who's becoming a bit of a bright spark for them as well. So this is a team who can catch a team like Larne. So again, it's similar to perhaps the Cliftonville thing. Get your goals and don't rely on a lead bonus runaway near the end to quell fears. So definitely in the mark of big shock if that was to happen to Larne. But yeah, a fun weekend to follow, a little break from league action, and you never know, we could see a shock or two, or as the odds will say, it'll just be all the favourites going through. But Irish Cup is where a little break from the monotony of the league. If it isn't going well for you, you can dream about hosting a big trophy at the end of the season until their dreams are quashed. So I look forward to the twists, the turns, and the drama of all that. Mark, we're up and running for 2024. Thank you so much for being the first guest of this year as the podcast enters its third technical year, as we're still here to finish off our second season. But for people that have enjoyed your chats, you've said that you're going to be on the radio. People can find you on the radio, of course. You do a bit of commentaries elsewhere. Where can people find you online?
Well, on Twitter, at Real Mark Strange, just in case there's any doubts over what Mark Strange it is.
Yeah, what about that fake Mark Strange? What's the story with him?
Just making sure there is none, just making sure everyone knows this whole blue tick nonsense on Twitter or X now. We gotta make sure they know who the real thing is. Also, I'm trying to update my Instagram. I'm like an old man with Instagram, but I've been, the other half Leah has been making sure that I've been keeping up to date. It's at Strannon Media on Instagram. And yeah, also we can see me, read me, hear me on BBC Radio website, Flash Score commentary website. So yeah, I'm omnipresent.
And I'll tell you what, one person that isn't present, that's fake Mark Strange, doesn't exist on Twitter. So don't no results found. So look, I'm not telling the people listening to this podcast to go out there and create a fake Mark Strange account called Fake Mark Strange. But
But now
you know. Mark, a pleasure. Enjoy the next few weeks. Look forward to chatting to you very soon. Maybe we'll share I don't know, some further leftover sandwich, a cup of tea, or even a little scone. Before we do that, actually, let's just say this. This has nothing to do with you. I just thought this was very funny. Just the typical. We'd share this story. We're in the post game already of this podcast. You can back me up here. So I was at that Loughgall game, Loughgall Dungannon, and it was like the first time that Loughgall had been in the Boxing Day top flight in the Boxing Day game for whatever it was, like 17 years back. 2006 was the last time they were in it, and the last time they were in a top flight, they're playing Boxing Day. It was against Dungannon. So I had this little story all prepared for me going on the radio. And I was chatting to one of the, literally, because I've been to Loughgall, so I don't really know the people around there. And you were there, and I said, oh, here today, I got the team sheet. I said, blah, blah, blah. Here, last time here's, whatever it was, 3-1 Dungannon. Because Roddy McAree scored for Dungannon. And then I was like, 3-1 that day. And the guy I was chatting to at Loughgall was like, oh yeah, early goal, red card, Roddy McAree scored. I'm like, how do you remember this? I was like, yeah, I was caretaker manager that day. Not only were they caretaker manager, but they remember that game, a random game from 17 years ago, with exact detail.
Yeah.
I'm like, that is the Irish League's so funny for that, isn't it?
Encyclopedic Loughgall knowledge. But if I remember rightly, too, he sort of went, yeah, I do. One of those ones, trying to recall it. And then went, oh yeah, I was manager for that one. I was like, oh right, yeah, okay, that's.
Oh right, okay. All right, fair enough.
I'm not many hats.
It's so good, so good. No, I enjoyed my first official outing down there. That game was very, very good game. But Mark, like I said, I look forward to holding hands across the gantry. We're calling it, is it?
Yeah, I like gantry. Yeah.
All right. Until next times. We will chat to you soon, and we'll update you in a couple of weeks on any further Cinnamon Strange Magical Mystery Tour updates.
Thanks.
Tally-ho!
Cheers.
All I can say is thank goodness for the mute button. Mainly for me this week, as I was able to bish it on numerous occasions. As Mark went on to talk about all his great thoughts and feelings, I had to hit that button, run away, cough into a corner, come back and try and sound professional off the back of his retort. I have been struggling through this, and I probably sound so odd with like barely one nostril to breathe and to fuel my thoughts and feelings. But hey, we got there in the end. I hope you're well. I hope you're doing good. We're here, brand new year, going to be the same old podcast moving forward. But if you happen to be brand new to the podcast, you know there's plenty of things to listen to in the past while. It's January, and I did a big January preview podcast. If you just look down on your podcast player, you'll be able to see that one. If you happen to miss last week's episode, which was all about the Boxing Day games, you can listen to that. If you want to follow this podcast, you know you can do that on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. It's at Kicking Match on all of those platforms. You can email me, kickingmatch@gmail. You can use, maybe you got a brand new smart device, you can say, hey, smart device, please play Kicking Match and Irish League podcast. And you're going to be able to relax and chill and do it from your sofa. Or maybe you got like a wee foot massage or something for Christmas as well. Combine them into one big super experience. Thank you for all of your support in 2023. I just want to say thank you. I really, really appreciate it. Going to keep delivering Irish League chat every week as much as I can. Until next time, until the other side of Irish Cup 5th round weekend. All the best, good luck, and I'll chat to you soon.